Hey traders, what's going on? Jamie Setley here. It is Friday, January 15th, 2021, and just wanted to share a few charts that I'm looking at as we head into next week. Pretty big day here in the markets. We're starting to see an unwind, essentially, of what we've had for just about 10 months since the March panic lows, COVID lows, whatever you want to call them. We're seeing a strong dollar today. We're seeing weak Bitcoin. We're seeing weak stocks. We're seeing weak commodities. So it's essentially, everything's down. The dollar is the only thing that's really outperforming. And that again is the opposite of really what's transpired as far as a big trend since last March. All right, so you do have to ask yourself, I guess, if this is, we're in for a larger, call it a counter move from current levels, and certainly a possibility. I did want to share just some of the levels I will be watching in the near term. Euro, really kind of the area just above 119 is a very big spot to pay attention to. You can see that is former resistance here. Here, that would have been in August and September. And then, of course, in November, this was the election, presidential election over here, is resistance initially in November, and really the breakout from that level is what took us into this final high just last week. And so we have obviously wiped out last week's move higher. And yes, we had a somewhat of a kind of a doji, hangman doji, or you could call it that on the weekly chart. I'm not going to show the weekly right now, but we're essentially back to where we were in early December on Euro. So 119 is a spot. Obviously, with the way that I've got this wave count shown here, showing 5 waves up from the lows back in March, you could be in for a much bigger corrective process. Maybe back towards the fourth wave of one less degree, which would be down at 116. That could certainly be a ways off. We don't know what kind of form, what kind of pattern we're going to get. You typically, if this was a larger second wave pullback, and this is a big one, what you would expect to see is probably a zigzag of some sort. So that would be an impulse down, a big rally in wave B, and then another big drop in wave C. So getting a bit ahead of ourselves now. For now, just focus on the levels. And again, just above 119 is going to be a big spot, I think, to pay attention to in euro dollar. All right, let's move on to Kiwi, which is an interesting chart as well. This is one we've been focusing on in updates, and we have got a channel. Oftentimes, you can't really draw a very good channel from these V bottom lows. In this case, you actually can, and we've been focusing on the parallels within the channel here. And in the most recent update, I talked about the fact that we had if I could see here, the 75 line, which was resistance. And so we were looking at the 25 line. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, lower parallel here, 25, median line or center line, 75 line, and then the upper parallel or 100 line. And we talked about the 75 line. So yesterday, the last couple of days, we were pressing against this level here. This is where we were selling, right? And we've come off that level a good deal, and we're actually bounced today, literally pit perfect, right off that 25 line. This is actually what we call symmetry in median line analysis, where the market will oscillate on either side of the median line, in an equidistant manner. So the same level from here to here as from here to here. Okay. So the bounce there was not a big surprise. As for what's next, given kind of my broader view on, the dollar, which is just now turning up, the next big spot and the big test for this bull run, this, larger bull run, is going to be the area around 70. So obviously this was 70 here. Okay. You had 70 support throughout December, and that's really where the last run came from. So that 70 to 70, 30, let's call it, is going to be a very big spot. I would expect to be taking some shorts off the table at that point. And then, we'll just have to see what happens. Like you could bounce from there, and find resistance somewhere else or just continue higher. Or, if we did break it, then you would look for this line to provide resistance at some point in the future. So as it is now, focus is on this level, and then we just kind of have to see what happens. Okay, so that Euro and Kiwi are some of the interesting dollar pairs that we're looking at heading into next week. Let's take a look at something a bit different. Let's look at Bitcoin actually. So Bitcoin is down 10% today. Last week's big surge, which was the best I believe since 2017, a good portion of that has obviously been wiped out. We actually have an inside week, believe it or not. Not many assets out there that you'll have an inside week once you have, a 10% down day during the week, but such is Bitcoin's volatility. So what we're looking at here in the red bars that you see are my volume studies, proprietary volume studies. And down here is actually volume, but it's normalized with a 13-week average. So you can see that we've had some expanded volume right back here when we had that top in the summer of 2019, and we have expanded volume the last couple of weeks. So these red bars are telling you that you traded to a yearly high, and then on high volume, and then the next week immediately, the succeeding week, you also had high volume, but a down week. This is only the second time that's happened in the history of this data, the last one being in July of 2019. July of 2019 obviously was a pretty big top for Bitcoin. We ended up trading at its high point from 13,900 all the way down to 3,900 during the COVID lows. We don't know what's going to happen next, but we can say that we have, conditions in place for some sort of a top, if you will. And that would make sense considering kind of the anecdotal evidence that we've seen over the last really couple of weeks, if not longer. I mean, it's the bubble of all bubbles, right? So dangerous to call a top there, of course, but certainly we have, an objective signal in the form of this volume action to suggest that downside is not impossible from these levels. All right. So I thought that was interesting, and this speaks to a larger macro concern, I believe. Again, the July 2019 high, and if you look back at your charts, look at what happened then. That was actually a big top in a number of currencies against the dollar as well. And I think I actually have a chart here that's going to show you. I do. And if I scroll back, right, especially since the COVID market, so to speak, and the Fed and their stimulus took over, last March, these markets have been moving very closely together. So you have Bitcoin in black, the Australian dollar is in red, the euro's in blue, and the Qs, or the NASDAQ, is in magenta. And you can see that, for the most part, it's all the same market. They tend to trend up together, down together into panic lows in March, and they've trended up ever since, right? Even minor tops and peaks and valleys have come in registered at the same time. So, I wouldn't necessarily take that Bitcoin signal, that weekly signal, lightly, right? So let's see what next week has in store, but just kind of wanted to give you a little primer as we head into next week and this weekend. So that's it. Jamie Setley here, signing off, and good luck.